In Alysa Liu and Eileen, China and America see a mirror image. People on social media in China and the West can't stop comparing Alysa Liu and Eileen, two of the biggest stars at the Winter Olympics. It's hard not to. Both were born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. Both have a parent from China. Both are sports prodigies. In Milan, Liu, 20, became the first American in 24 years to win gold in women's figure skating, and she added a second gold in the team event. Gu, 22, won 1 gold and 2 silvers in freestyle skiing. The difference, Liu, whose father was a Tiananmen Manira dissident who fled China for the United States in 1989, was on Team USA. Gu, who obtained a Chinese passport in 2019, chose to represent China. In the United States, many people celebrated Liu's performance as a win for liberty, while some, like former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom and various conservative media figures, have called Gu a traitor. Several politicians have accused her of supporting America's adversary. On the Chinese internet, the treatment of the two women was largely reversed. On the Chinese social media platform Weibo, for instance, a user based in Guangdong commented, "Eileen Gu is a hero of China while Alysa Liu is a descendant of an anti-China figure." The reaction is both unfortunate and predictable. As the United States and China intensify a geopolitical rivalry that could determine global leadership deep into the 21st century, nationalism on both sides has intensified. The uncomfortable comparison so many are making between Liu and Gu speaks to modern sport. It exposes questions of heritage, loyalty, and identity, thrusting the two athletes into the politics of both countries. Much of the commentary is a proxy for rival nationalism. On the American side, increasingly vocal demands that immigrants prove their allegiance. On the Chinese side, an insistence that Chinese ethnicity demands loyalty and that dissent is betrayal. The Chinese Communist Party has long advanced an ethno-nationalist idea of belonging, that people of Chinese descent, wherever they reside and whatever passport they hold, remain part of the Chinese nation. Under Xi Jinping, who took full power in 2013, this principle has strengthened. Ethnicity has become a bond that carries expectations of loyalty. Many Chinese people, in and outside the country, who criticize or question official Beijing positions, not only political activists but journalists, too, are invariably labeled sellouts or worse. This is worth keeping in mind when Americans call Gu a traitor. They are borrowing the Chinese Communist Party's vocabulary and adopting its framework of birthplace loyalty. The ethno-nationalist philosophy also explains the scale of China's investment in athletes of Chinese heritage. Of the 48 players on China's men's and women's Olympic hockey teams in 2022, 22 of them were naturalized athletes with Chinese lineage. Gu was the most visible example of this recruitment effort. When she switched to represent China in 2019, she became a geopolitical asset for Beijing. A Beijing city government document published last year showed that the Municipal Sports Bureau planned to pay Gu and one other American-born athlete competing for China a combined $14 million over 3 years. Their names were later scrubbed from the record after it drew public criticism. The episode offered a rare glimpse into how the state invests in athletic success as a form of soft power. If Gu's case illustrates how the state embraces certain members of the Chinese diaspora, Liu's family story illustrated how it treats others. Her father, Arthur Liu, was a student activist who ended up on the government's most wanted list after the Tiananmen crackdown. He fled to the United States, became a lawyer and raised 5 children as a single father. Alysa is the oldest. She started skating at 5 and became national champion at 13. Arthur Liu said in media interviews that he had been approached about having Alysa represent China, but declined out of concerns about the country's human rights record. Before the 2022 Beijing Olympics, it was reported at the time, U.S. authorities informed Liu that he and Alysa were targets of a Chinese government-linked surveillance and harassment effort. The U.S. government provided protection for Alysa during the Games. She was 16. It was her first trip to China, Arthur Liu also said he learned that Beijing was aware that his daughter had once posted an Instagram message about the government's crackdown on the ethnic minority Uyghurs in China. When Alysa Liu won gold medals in Milan, she became a problem that China's censorship apparatus could not quite solve. Praise for her skating on the internet in China was often followed by vague warnings, usually from commenters, to look up her family background and political orientation. They couldn't be more specific and had to resort to euphemisms and coded language because references to June 4, 1989, the date of the Tiananmen massacre, are heavily censored. She is sometimes called a second-generation anti-China figure. If parts of China struggle with how to absorb Liu's story, parts of the United States struggle to understand Gu's. Their underlying logic, that identity carries duty, sounds familiar to the ears of many Chinese. At the same time, some on the American political left risk flattening all criticism of GU as racism, sidestepping questions about how authoritarian governments deploy athletes and soft power. GU grew up with feet in both worlds, but the rivalry between Washington and Beijing has narrowed the space for dual belonging. In the modern world of sports, athletes are often celebrated not only for their achievements but also for the stories they represent. Few athletes embody this dual significance as vividly as Alysa Liu and Eileen Liu. Both young, extraordinarily talented, and culturally connected to both China and the United States, they have become symbols of a fascinating mirror relationship between the two nations. Through their lives and careers, we see how identity, culture, ambition, and global politics intersect in the world of sports. Alysa Liu and Eileen Liu grew up in the United States, raised in environments that encouraged excellence, independence, and opportunity. At the same time, both athletes carry deep Chinese heritage. Their families maintained connections with Chinese culture, language, and values while building their lives in America. Because of this dual identity, they stand at a crossroads between two powerful countries that often see each other as rivals yet share countless cultural and human connections. Eileen Liu, a freestyle skier and Olympic champion, became one of the most famous examples of this cross-cultural identity. Born and raised in California to a Chinese mother and an American father, Liu grew up skiing in the mountains of the United States while also spending time in China. When she decided to represent China in international competition, especially at the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, it sparked intense discussion around the world. For China, GU became a symbol of national pride and international recognition. She represented the idea that China could attract global talent and inspire young athletes. Her fluency in Mandarin, her embrace of Chinese culture, and her visible connection to her heritage made her a celebrated figure in